The hot sun begins to fade. The sand is still warm on my toes. I've walked this path 1,000 times. It's been years, but I remember every rock, anticipate every turn. Growing up, I'd jump on every chance I had to head out to that cabin in the desert and visit my grandpa. As soon as I'd arrive, he'd be waiting for me on the front porch with an orange soda and his walking stick. I can still feel his leathery hand holding mine. I think back on when everything was new, when I saw all this for the first time. What is that, Grandpa? That's a tumbleweed. Why do they roll around like that? Well, once they get old, it breaks free and goes wherever the wind takes it. That's how their seeds get spread across the sand. He always knew everything. We come over a ridge and see a field of cactus. I've never seen something like this before. They were beautiful with big, bright, white flowers on top. He watched me as I danced through the field. We rest at the end of the trail on a large, smooth stone. The sun is setting, the cool night air moves in. My grandpa holds out both hands to me, closed into fists. I know this game. I study them each carefully and point to the right one. Inside was the seed. Ha! I was right again. I've never lost at that game. He hands me the seed and quietly lets the one from his left hand fall. We skip the rest of the way back to the cabin. At the end of every summer, I hated saying goodbye. Life was so simple there. As we made the long drive back to the Midwest, I kept a small mason jar in my lap. Inside were some rocks, soil and sand, and one precious seed. The school year would start and my life would begin again. I'd always catch myself dreaming of the desert. As soon as I'd get home, I would turn on my heat lamp and watch my seed for signs of life. Every day I would make sure the soil was just right, there was just enough water, and that the light would provide that needed heat. My grandfather would write me letters, telling me what he and Grandma were doing, updating me on the weather, and always closing with, "How's little cactus?" I would write him back, telling him about my mean friends or send a picture of my new haircut. I'd always close with a photo of little cactus, something with a sign saying howdy, or maybe dressing him in a sombrero and mustache. In high school, I remember having some friends over. One of them asked about little cactus. "Why do you have that in your room?" I explained that I liked it, that I planted it 10 years ago from a seed my grandpa got me. "Does it ever make a flower?" "They can, but it takes years, and the conditions have to be perfect. I've been trying for so long, I don't know if it'll ever bloom." She takes a closer look at little cactus and says, "I like roses." The other girl adds, "Oh, I love tulips." I straighten up and say, "Well, I like cactus." The girls look at each other and start to laugh. I sit on my bed a week later, reading a letter from my grandpa. "Don't be upset with your friends. They haven't seen the fields that you have seen. To them, a flower is something pretty that you cut and put in a vase for a moment of pleasure. All they see are spines and thorns. It's a gift to understand the beauty that comes from nurturing and growing something." He always knew everything. I was sitting in my room when the phone rang. Somehow I just knew. My mom stands in the doorway, tears in her eyes. Before she says a word, I look at her and say, "Grandpa's gone." I don't remember much of the funeral. It was small, with people saying kind words about a man I felt they really didn't even know. Everyone was watching me, waiting for me to break down, to sob. I never did. As family gathers at the cabin, consoling my grandmother with casseroles and sangria, I grab my backpack and his walking stick and head out to our trail. I've never walked it alone. I get to the end where he and I would sit on that large stone, watch the sun light the sky and sand up with an orange glow. I unzip my backpack and carefully take out little cactus. I dig a small hole in the sand and set the root and the soil in. I pour the last of the water from my canteen and say goodbye. The darkness followed me after that day, more than I realized. Weeks turned to months, and eventually years would pass before I ever found my way back to the desert. Mom asked, as she did every summer, if I'd like to join the family to visit Grandma. I'm really busy, Mom, with work and volleyball, but tell her I said hi. Baby, she's not well. I think this might be our last chance to see her. I stare out of the window as we drive through the night. It feels like the distance has somehow gotten longer until I finally see that familiar light on the porch. What I wouldn't give for an orange soda right now. Grandma's in her bed. Her hair, ever since I remember, has always been up in a bun, but for the first time I see it down. She looks pretty in a white cotton nightgown with silver hair flowing across the pillows. Everyone is there saying hello, making small talk, but I stand silently in the corner. Her eyes finally meet mine, and I see her smile. She beckons me over to her bedside. Everyone leaves the room, and I just sit there with Grandma in the quiet for what seems like hours, although I'm sure it was just minutes. She reaches out and takes my hand into hers. You know, he loved you more than life itself. He would always talk about his special little flower. In the afternoons, I'd catch him watching for the dust of the mail truck. The bills would get thrown on the table until he'd hold one envelope in the air in triumph. We would brew 2 cups of coffee and go out on the porch, where he'd read to me your letters over and over again. Those pictures of your plant were so funny. He would just laugh and laugh. She motions towards Grandpa's closet. I open the door. Covering every inch of the walls are hundreds of pictures of little cactus, each held up by its own little thumbtack. I felt a heat start to spread through my body. I tried desperately to keep it down, but it was too late. A sound I'd never heard pours out of my mouth, and I begin to sob uncontrollably. I'm so sorry I haven't visited. I just didn't know what I should do. I'm so lost. Why did he have to leave us? Sweet child, he didn't leave us. When there's a great need in this world and it's met by your great gift, that's a life well lived. Your grandfather's greatest gift was his love for you. It made this world a better place. It would hurt his heart so much to see the sadness that you've been living in all these years. I don't know what to do. I don't feel anything anymore. Everything I do is wrong. I couldn't even get my cactus to bloom. If he was here, he could tell me what to do, but he's not. I don't want to let go. All things need to go where God intends them to go. If we stand against that, our lives become gray and broken. Your cactus was born to live in the desert, not on a desk. Sometimes you have to let go of the things you love to let it become what God designed it to be. Do you believe in heaven? Of course, Grandma. Do you believe your grandpa's there? You know that I do. Then with all that you know about heaven, would you bring him back if you could? I stare at the ground. I see my old hiking boots in the corner. I lace them up and grab the walking stick that still sits by the door. I'm exhausted. I finally reach the end of the trail. The shadows lengthen as the sun begins to fade. The sand is still warm on my toes. I've walked this path 1,000 times. It's been years, but I remember every rock, anticipate every turn. As I go to sit on the large, smooth stone at the end of the trail, I immediately notice that something is different. There to the left is a little cactus. A tumbleweed blows by as my eyes Follow the familiar pattern of spines running up its base. There, on the top, is a beautiful white bloom.